Exciting news! You can now purchase my book, Rational Answers to Stupid Questions, simply by clicking the top link in the description. The book is available exclusively on BookBaby, who has been my partner in creating my book. Enjoy the video. Welcome back, everyone. Well, today we're taking a look at Christianity 101. I don't know what to think of this channel. I don't think it's actually operated by a person, because as we can see, every single video that they have has the exact same thumbnail of what looks like a 13-year-old girl, groomer much, and all the videos are voiced by an AI narration. And another thing is that every single time whatever the channel is comments on something, it's this enormous copy and pasted thing. It's not always exactly the same, but it's really hard for me to imagine that a person is actually just going through and typing every single one of these things out. I mean, look at these. There you go. Look at these responses. And a lot of times it is copy and pasted. I think this is just like the script or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's just artificial intelligence. And I use the term intelligence very, very loosely here for this. But yeah, it's just weird. I don't even remember how I stumbled across this channel, but basically every single video they have is trying to debunk evolution. The video I was originally going to do is like their argument against claiming evolution is faith means you also have to claim that atomic theory or any other scientific theory is faith. But I kind of went down a rabbit hole with the enormous comments that the channel provides, and I ended up on this video about 30 failed predictions of naturalistic evolution. So we're going to do this one first.
Failed predictions of naturalistic evolution. Evolutionary biology has a long history of failed predictions. Some evolution believers...
Did you guys see that mammoth? Look at how long its tail
Evolutionary
is.
biology has a long history of failed predictions. Some evolution believers claim that evolution is consensus biology, and so we should not challenge it. However, the reality is that evolutionary biology has a long history of failed predictions. We will list more than 30 examples of this later in this video. So there is no need for any rational person to accept naturalistic mega-evolution just because many, but not all biologists
what the hell is mega-evolution?
just believe in it. Item 1. Naturalistic mega-evolution. The claim of single-cell to human evolution by random chance and natural selection has had a long history of world-class scientists who have been skeptical of it. So, it is completely valid for us to join such world-class scientists in being skeptical of naturalistic mega-evolution.
Okay, so this isn't a failed prediction, like, at all. In fact, what the evidence actually tells us is that we share genes with every organism on the planet, which means that we are related. Now, does that prove mega evolution, whatever that is? Not exactly. I mean, science never proves anything, if you ask some people. But the evidence that would have falsified all life being on the planet, that's the opposite of what we found. If there were zero genetic similarities between life, if humans had DNA but no other organism had DNA, then that would have falsified the idea. Or if like the hereditary molecule, whatever, for every organism was different, or if what makes life actually work was, you know, protoplasm or whatever, and it was different in every organism, that would have falsified it. But no, again, I reiterate, the evidence that does support the idea is exactly what we found. So you obviously can't claim that mega evolution from single-celled to the life we see today, if that's what mega evolution is, you can't claim that that's been falsified. Nor did they, actually.
Item 2. There is...
Okay, so yeah, they've moved on. I don't understand. Yeah, so that's a failed prediction, but they didn't even tackle it. They didn't say it's been falsified, and then they just move on.
No value.
See, this is why I think this is like AI with the I in quotation marks, because that thought was completely underdeveloped. It's like they just put prompts into ChatGPT, but they were using like the cheap version of it or something like that. And so like just the ideas are just so bad and disconnected.
Skeptical of naturalistic mega-evolution. Item 2. There is no valid evidence for naturalistic mega-evolution. The evidence confirms microevolution, adaptation of a species inside a genus or family.
Okay, so yes, there is evidence for mega evolution. I just went over it, so I won't repeat myself. But I just... the microevolution is fine, but macroevolution is not. So once again, this isn't a prediction or a separate argument. What they're just doing is restating their conclusion. There's no evidence of it. And the proof of that is that there's no evidence of it. So micro versus macro, that's been dealt with countless times, including by me. And I'm not going to go into it here. You can buy my book. I go into it in good detail in my book.
But the evidence falsifies naturalistic mega-evolution, the claim of single-cell to human evolution. Item 3. Math shows that there is not enough time in the entire 4.5 billion year history of the Earth for random chance to create all of the nucleotide changes needed to create all of the taxa-specific orphan genes in the biosphere. Item 4.
Okay, not a prediction. Show me the math, the paper, or anything to back up that claim. Orphan genes are also like very well understood. I'll put a thing for a video right here that you can check out on orphan genes. Orphan genes don't propose a problem for the theory of evolution, or even mega evolution.
4. Math shows that there is not enough time in the entire 4.5 billion year history of the Earth for natural selection to substitute all of the nucleotide changes in the animal populations for all of the taxa-specific orphan genes in the biosphere.
What was the difference between that and the claim before?
Item 5. Alleged consensus biology has a long history of being wrong. So, it is completely valid for any intelligent person to be skeptical of claims that consensus biology has proved naturalistic mega-evolution to be true.
So, that's not a prediction, right? The title of this video is 30 Failed Predictions, and this isn't a specific prediction. Also, can we see the list of what these claims supposedly are?
Biology. Here's a list of claims that biology has been wrong on.
Going to give them to
1.
us.
Ineffectiveness of hand washing in medicine. 2. Miasma theory of disease. 3. 4. Bodily humors. Theory of disease. 4. Static proteins. 5. Phrenology. 6. Homunculus theory. 7. Bad air as the cause of malaria. 8. Telegony in inheritance. 9. Oscillatory blood circulation. 10. Preformation in embryology. 11. Bloodletting as medical treatment.
Okay, so we'll stop there. Almost none of those ideas came after evolution. And the truth of evolution is not predicated on whether or not blood circulation works in a certain way, or if malaria is caused by Plasmodium. Furthermore, many of those ideas, although not created by religion, were heavily endorsed by religion. Christians thought that, yes, these ideas coincide with scripture. For example, they mentioned preformationism in there. Christians jumped on preformationism. I have a video somewhere on my YouTube about preformationism, if you want to look that up. It's basically the idea that within either the sperm or the egg, there was a fully formed human. But that would mean that inside the sperm or egg, where there was the fully formed human, would be fully formed humans inside of those fully formed humans ad infinitum. I don't know if that's the proper use of that term, but whatever. Now, that's just simply impossible. I actually did the math in my video. I don't remember it off the top of my head. But eventually, like, you only get a couple of generations or a few generations down, and then the width of the homunculus is much smaller than the width of an atom, so that obviously isn't how it works. Now, the reason Christians jumped on preformationism, what they really liked it for was, so the idea that we all inherit original sin, I find that to be rather disgusting. You can't be guilty of a crime you didn't commit. And it appears that even some like hardline Christians, even back in the day, kind of felt the same way. Good for them. Their brains were functional. So the way they got around this was they thought, hey, if Preformationism is true, then that means that all people that will ever be born already existed when Adam and Eve existed, meaning we were all present in the garden, and so we participated in sin. Still, like, a terrible argument, even if Preformationism was true, but there you go. Another very important thing to keep in mind is that nobody in history has ever used the Bible or even the belief in God to successfully predict anything.
Evolutionary biology. Here's a list of claims that evolutionary biology has been wrong on. 1.
Are these are these part of the 30 failed predictions, or is this the consensus biology thing? We're back at number 1. We started with a list of 30, and then we interrupted that to give a list of claims, and now we're starting a brand new list. See, I don't think that a real person is behind this. It's so badly done.
Spontaneous generation of life from organic matter. 2. Piltdown man.
Okay, spontaneous generation is wrong. First of all, that's not a prediction. Evolution doesn't say that spontaneous generation must be the case. You could argue that the first life on our planet would have come about through spontaneous generation, but not in the way spontaneous generation is imagined. I mean, people like Rudolf Virchow, I think he was the one, he thought that if you take like some basil and oil and put it in the hole in a wall and put a brick there, it'll make scorpions. Spontaneous generation is poof, magically life is appearing from non-life. And that's not what abiogenesis is. And that has nothing to do with whether or not evolution is true. But if spontaneous generation is false, then that means that special creation is false. So congratulations, dipshit. What do we got? Piltdown
Fraud
man?
Made from a human skull with orangutan jawbone. Piltdown.
Right. So, okay, Piltdown man. First of all, none of these things are predictions. So I'm not going to say that anymore, but I'm just going to predict that the first thing to say about every single claim that this person or whatever made this video is that's not a prediction. So anyways, moving on. Ron Wyatt, if you don't know who Ron Wyatt is, he was a nurse from Texas. I think he's dead now, but he made several trips to the Middle East and claimed to have made all these biblical discoveries. He claimed he found Sodom and Gomorrah. He didn't. He claimed he found Mount Sinai and then it was burnt. He claimed that he found Jesus's blood and the Ark of the Covenant underneath Jesus's alleged tomb inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre or whatever it's called. He's never backed anything up. He's just a pathological liar. And even the other stuff where it's like he wasn't lying, he was just too stupid to understand what he was looking at. Holy Kool-Aid has a really good couple of videos about like failed archaeology and some Ron Wyatt claims. Go ahead and check that out. If scientists who believe in evolution create hoaxes, and that means that evolution is false, then Ron Wyatt proves that Christianity is false. And like the biblical perspective historically has always been wrong. And like literally it's always been wrong. The Vatican didn't accept heliocentrism until 1822. There's this verse, I think it's in Genesis, where I think it's Joseph. I don't remember exactly, but they talk about if you take sticks and you carve them like you're like with a vegetable peeler kind of, like carve stripes in them and then put that in the water, your cows will get stripes on them. So yeah, that's obviously false. I just talked about that in my VOR debate that I uploaded the other day. The stuff in Leviticus about cleansing a leper by smearing bird blood on their ear. Yeah, that's not a thing. That doesn't do anything. Even an idiot would understand that that's not real. Could somebody, like, commenters, could somebody please tell me anything that the Bible has ever claimed about the world that is actually true? And so let's not use the, prophecies have been fulfilled. So give me something that doesn't assume the truth of the text, and those prophecies were written decades to centuries to millennia after the supposed events never took place. So that's obviously, that's not good evidence either. And if you find something, if you do find something, then congratulations for being right once in the history of forever.
Man was viewed as a missing link between humans and apes. 3. Nebraska man, actually a pigtooth, claimed to be a human ancestor. 4. Peking man claimed to be a direct human ancestor, later reclassified as not a direct human ancestor. 5. Java man claimed to be a missing link between apes and humans, later reclassified. 6. Lamarckian inheritance of acquired characteristics. 7. Lysenko.
Lamarckism is false, therefore Darwinian evolution is false. This is like saying, well, because geocentrism is false, Earth is flat. No, heliocentrism isn't literally true either, but let's just go with that. No, we believe in heliocentrism. People in the past believed in geocentrism and were wrong, but them being wrong doesn't mean that we're also wrong, and it certainly doesn't mean that you are right. The funny thing about geocentrism is that although it's false, there are elements of it, like in a way, that are true. Like it assumes that Earth is, a globe, spherical. Now there are elements of Lamarckism that are almost kind of true. The epigenetics revolution is kind of telling us that. But yeah, Lamarckism really is false. But the continued science has discovered what really is true. Like, we graduated from geocentrism to heliocentrism. We've graduated away from Lamarckism.
7. Lysenkoism for crop improvement. 8.
Not a prediction, but the Soviet Union, they rejected Darwinian evolution. So they actually expelled and executed biologists who believed in it. And once again, I'm so confused. Where are we? Are these failed predictions? Are these times that evolution was wrong? You can't claim that Lysenkoism was evolution being wrong. They didn't believe in evolution. None of them did. This is very well documented.
Eugenics for human improvement. 9.
Okay, so they're going at the speed of light here, so sorry. Eugenics. So eugenics predates Darwinian evolution. The guy, what was it, Herbert Spencer or something like that, whoever the first person to write about eugenics, he published his book before Darwin published On the Origin of Species. I wrote about this in my book too. I just don't remember the dates off the top of my head. It was argued for, like eugenics, people argued in favor of eugenics after On the Origin of Species was published. But again, that has no bearing on whether or not evolution is true. Like, Nazis were not flat earthers. They thought the earth was a globe. But that doesn't mean, just because somebody who's a horrible person believes what you believe, doesn't mean that what you believe is false. You could argue, sort of, that eugenics was a prediction, but once again, better science proved to us that the underlying assumptions behind eugenics are completely false. I think we're kind of back to the if geocentrism is false, that proves that the earth is flat thing again. Protoplasm, yeah, so, well, they said protoplasmic cells. I have no idea what that means. Again, they're pretty sure they're using artificial intelligence. I assume they mean protoplasm. I brought that up earlier. Protoplasm was a substance that people thought existed, and it only existed inside of living organisms. I did a podcast, and it's on YouTube too. The episode's called Vital Essence, where I talk about that. But the idea of protoplasm has obvious influences from the vital essence idea. And that goes all the way back to Aristotle and Galen. So again, this isn't a prediction of evolution. Aristotle and Galen did not believe in any kind of evolution.
Protoplasmic cells. 10. Simple static proteins. 11. All dinosaurs as cold-blooded slow creatures. 12. Universal gradualism. 13. Single tree of life.
Okay, so dinosaurs as cold-blooded, once again, not really a prediction. It was a logical inference based on what we know about modern reptiles, but, tomato, potato. Universal gradualism is false because of punctuated equilibrium or what? Actually, funny enough, I was scrolling through some comments that the channel or whatever made, and I did see a couple of weird things. Whoever this is, whatever it is, they're not a young Earth creationist apparently, so that's really weird. I don't know what they believe about life, because that would tell me that they don't believe in a literal Garden of Eden. And if animals have gone extinct in the past and we have new ones, then this person has to believe in spontaneous magical creation by God. So I don't know. But I did see specifically they said they don't like the mega evolution, but they said something about they're in favor of punctuated equilibrium. However, if this person actually did their research, they would know that punctuated equilibrium and even gradualism work fine together. The idea of an organism evolving does, like, for example, the toucan. The toucan has that absurdly long beak, right? Now, Darwin may have argued that, yes, every generation, the beak should just gradually get a fraction of a millimeter bigger. Maybe Darwin would have argued that, although I don't really think so, because what we really have is, within the population of toucans, there's going to be massive variations of the beaks in the first place. It's like people. There are people who are 8 feet tall. There are people who are 2 feet tall. So you can't picture it as every single organism is the same and they are just ever so gradually morphing to become this new, extended, different version. What punctuated equilibrium says is that the species, like on the genus level, essentially, they kind of remain static instead of like a gradual ramp where there's just constant, inexorable change. You have, it's more like a staircase. We have many, perhaps even thousands of generations of sort of stasis. And then for whatever reason, because of competition or because the environment changes or because of genetic drift or whatever, we have sudden changes like rapid speciation. That doesn't mean that you get a completely different kind of organism. Again, it happens like at the genus level. And Stephen Jay Gould and the other guy whose name I can't remember, they saw this with like in the shells of ammonites first, I believe. But again, those changes aren't very extreme. You're not modifying the entire organism. They're just subtle changes. Punctuated equilibrium is gradualism. Richard Dawkins talks about this in his book, The Blind Watchmaker, which I actually just finished a few days ago. Notice how there's no argument in any of these. It's literally just claims about things. How do we know mega evolution is false? Because Lamarckism is false. There, moving on. So, what else did we have here? The single tree of life. So now we're getting into Carl Woese territory. And does life have a single root, or is it kind of like a spider web in the early stages because of things like horizontal gene transfer? That wouldn't prove if evolution is false, and it certainly doesn't act as evidence in favor of creation. So this channel is like they're literally arguing science says evolution, but not God. But science actually says a slightly different version of evolution played out. Therefore, evolution is false, and therefore God.
14. All of the core tenets of Darwinism. 15.
What? Are they claiming that they're false? Or like the predictions? Literally every single one of the core tenets of Darwinian evolution is true. Even young Earth creationists believe in them. I talk to them regularly. They believe in natural selection. So what are the core tenets? It's basically there exists among organisms variation in their population. Yep, check. Even an idiot understands that. More organisms are born than ever reach reproductive maturity. Yep, check. There's competition among organisms for resources. Yep, check. Whatever causes the variation among organisms is heritable. Check. they're called genes. We know that now. And then because the environment puts pressure on organisms and only a few of them reach reproductive age, or, well, not many of them reach reproductive age, but even fewer of them that do actually reproduce because there's continued competition. So that causes the fittest to survive, to have the best statistical odds, and that changes the population. Every single one of those things, even people that deny evolution agree with.
Biogenetic law. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. 16. Universally...
Okay, again, sorry, they go so fast. The ontogeny thing. So ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. What that means is Ernst Haeckel, whatever, he thought that we literally go through a fish and then an amphibian, then a reptile stage, and then a mammal stage as we develop as embryos. Now that's not true. But there are extreme similarities between us because evolution is descent with modification. It can't start anything over from whole cloth. So like, for example, the zygote, the fertilized first cell, yeah, unless you can look at its DNA, that actually is indistinguishable from every other organism. But anyways, Haeckel's ideas, they were basically immediately refuted by Carl Ernst von Baer. Again, better science fixed somebody else's bad idea. But this person's arguing that one bad apple spoils the bunch. So I could argue, every single flat earther that I've ever talked to is a Christian, except for one person. And I think they were trolling, but whatever. So if that's the case, therefore Christianity is false. See how stupid that argument is? Do you see how stupid your argument is?
Consilient phylogenies. 17. Universally consilient nested hierarchy. Here are additional failed predictions.
Okay, so the universally consilient whatever. The scientists who have different views about phylogenetics, cladistics, classification, and all that stuff, every single one of them is a believer in evolution, Darwinian evolution over billions of years. Some of them have different ideas and radical ideas. Carl Woese, like way later in his life, he grew to like kind of despise Darwin, but nobody really knew what he meant by any of his arguments. He was very pissed off that he didn't win the Nobel Prize, and I think he became a grumpy old man. And this is kind of a side thing, but I actually sort of agree. Of all the people that never won a Nobel Prize, I think Carl Woese may be the most unfortunate snuff of all of them. Is snuff the right word for that? I have no idea.
Of evolution. Evolutionary biology. List 2. 1 DNA code is...
So we're on our second list, which is an embedded list within the embedded tangent within the 30 failed predictions.
Not special. 2. The cell's fundamental molecules are universal. 3. Mutations are not adaptive. 4. Competition is greatest between neighbors. 5. Protein evolution.
Every single one of those things was so incredibly wrong. So, okay, we gotta... DNA is not special. In the early 20th century, DNA was sort of viewed as a quote-unquote dumb molecule. And everyone thought that heredity was going to be contained in proteins. Proteins make up about half... If you take all the water out of your body, about half of what's left of you is proteins. And yeah, in the early 20th century, people assumed that proteins were the most important things. We knew nucleic acid existed, but nobody really thought too much of it. But once again, that's not a prediction of evolution. In fact, a prediction of evolution was that there would be a hereditary molecule. And it turned out not to be a protein. It turned out to be nucleic acids. But no, evolution actually was proven by the science, as a matter of fact. But yeah, evolutionary biology never said there's this stuff called DNA, and if you can prove DNA is unimportant, then evolution is false. This fucking idiot. Mutations are not adaptive. That was the other thing. Who has ever said that mutations are not adaptive. Creationists are the ones who say that mutations are always harmful, which is false. So, yeah, I don't know what the point of that could possibly have been. Yeah, competition. Who or what proves that competition is not greatest among neighbors? That's what it was. So like, is this person telling me that pelicans on the East Coast are most threatened by pelicans on the West Coast? What did that mean? I may be misrepresenting their argument. That's because they don't give any arguments. And what about protein evolution? It literally just says protein evolution. Do proteins not evolve? And did evolution claim that they do? Or do they evolve, and did evolution claim that they don't? I don't know what to say.
6. Histone proteins cannot tolerate much change. 7.
Where's the 30 reasons why evolution is false? Histone proteins cannot tolerate change. Is that a failed prediction of evolution? Or does the fact that histone proteins can't tolerate change prove evolution is false? If they can tolerate change, that's positive evidence of evolution, isn't it? I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Molecular clock keeps evolutionary time. 8. Pentadactyl pattern and common descent. 9. Serological tests reveal evolutionary time.
Okay, so we'll pause here. The molecular clock. There's nothing wrong with the molecular clock. It never yields contradictory results. Now, sometimes the dates have to be calibrated, but the molecular clock never suggests that organisms that are known to be way more distantly related than others drifted apart genetically more recently than others. If hopefully I think I said that right. Hopefully that makes sense. But it never gives contradictory results. Pentadactyl pattern. I don't know exactly what this means 5 digits. That's what pentadactyl means. So, like, are they arguing that because not every animal has 5 digits, evolution is false? That would be really dumb. You can look at transition fossils of horses, and we can really clearly see that the early ones have multiple digits, and then they transition away from that to just one overly developed digit that they walk on. The fossil record shows that it's completely unambiguous. It's right there. But the pentadactyl pattern, that wouldn't prove or disprove anything.
10. Biology is not lineage specific. 11. Similar species share similar genes. 12. MicroRNA. 13. Genomic features are not sporadically distributed. 16. Species should form an evolutionary tree.
They do. Again, the Carl Woese thing, like with the horizontal gene transfer or whatever. I had a cool discussion with somebody the other day. Endosymbiosis. That's not really evolution. Well, it's not Darwinian evolution. It's evolution. But if it happened, that wouldn't prove anything else false. So there is a tree of life.
17. Complex structures evolved from simpler structures.
They did. We can see it in the fossil record.
8.
And you can see it in the molecular biology as well.
18. Structures do not evolve before there is a need.
So structures do not evolve before there is a need. So that's kind of like the argument of the giraffe's neck. I talk about this in my book too. The giraffe, the blood pressure in its veins, if it would bend down, would be so great on the brain that it would cause the brain to hemorrhage. So giraffes have valves, but they can't have valves before they have the long neck. So evolution could never have seen into the future that the giraffe is going to one day have a long neck and then have the valves. They have to exist at the same time. Blah, blah, blah. That completely discounts the idea of gradualism, right? So, for example, horses have veins in the valves, they have valves in the veins in their necks. But if horses didn't have those, their brains wouldn't hemorrhage if they bent over to drink. So you can have the valves for no real significant reason. Well, I mean, the valves probably play a role, but the role isn't protecting the brain from brain damage. That's not part of its function. But that doesn't mean that, well, how do I want to say this? Once that structure is in place, though, then the neck can get longer and the brain is protected. So, for example, like with flight in birds, we know that theropod dinosaurs had feathers, but they didn't use them for flight. But those feathers could be used for warmth and insulation or just as sexual displays or whatever. But then eventually, some dinosaurs, they found that, hey, I can slow my fall down with these feathers. And then it evolves to gliding when the feathers get a little bit better. And then eventually it evolves into flight. An organ can precede its modern function. Basically, you can have feathers before you have flight. So that's what this number 18 is arguing. It's just a junk argument.
19. Ultra-conserved elements. 20. Nature does not make leaps.
Literally no clue what either of those two things mean, and they're not going to tell us what they mean.
21. The major plant groups share a common ancestor.
They do. The genetics in the fossil record backs this up.
22. Altruism. 23. Cell death.
Altruism. So, yeah, I guess this has been argued, but not successfully. If I have altruistic behavior and I like sacrifice myself for somebody that's part of my in-group, the evolution could obviously favor that. Like if a parent sacrifices themselves for their children, you may be like, well, evolution can't explain that. Yes, it can, because if I save my child, I've already reproduced, and so my genes have carried on. My child has them, right? So being biologically programmed with that kind of instinct, it works just fine. I actually talk about this in the second book that I'm writing, Facts That Aren't True, with regard to bees. So in a beehive, it's very weird because there's only one queen, but why do all the other females go to all that work? They're actually the ones with stingers that will die. Why would female bees who don't get to reproduce act that way? It seems to fly in the face of evolution, but it makes perfect sense when we look at the genetics. So it's really complicated, but female bees are 75% genetically similar, rather than normally siblings are only 50% genetically similar. And that's because the males only have half the DNA the females do. So for female bees that are sisters, their father always gives them the exact same combination of genes, whereas normally a father only passes down half their genes. So that's why it's 75%, not 25%. Well, if a female bee were to have children, she would only share half her genes with them. So the female bee, from the genetic perspective, which is to say from the evolutionary perspective, which is to say from the selfish gene perspective, has a vested interest in protecting the colony, the group as a whole, because that gives her better odds of preserving her genes. Cell death, I don't understand how that could possibly be an argument against evolution. It would be an argument against the really weird, like Ken Ham and Kent Hovind school of philosophy, because they say there couldn't be death in the garden before sin. But, animals, obviously, they go through cell death, but they would just say, well, that doesn't count.
We will discuss these failed predictions in future videos. Conclusion: biology has a long history of being wrong.
Wait, what? They said there were 30 and the list ended at 23.
And so does evolutionary biology. So,
again, the Bible has never been right about anything.
There is no need for any rational person to accept naturalistic mega-evolution, simply because many, but not all biologists believe in it.
Well, that would be the best possible justification for believing in it, if you ask me. But anyways, that was, I think I'm probably stupider now, and so are you, so I'm sorry about that. But come back next time and we'll do some more. Thanks.